Good afternoon, everyone. My name's David Turner. I'm the Managing Director here at RiskNZ. Welcome to our last lunchtime seminar 2022. And gee, we've had a really good year of seminars, and we're ending on a very interesting one, a very exciting one we're all looking forward to. I would like to thank and acknowledge the support of Risk New Zealand sponsors who make this possible. That's CAMS, Protect, Aon, LexisNexis, SAO Global, Insurance Business New Zealand, and F24. All participants today have been put on mute, but please feel free to type questions straight into the Q&A panel anytime during the session, but we'll have the Q&A session towards the end of the presentation. Now on to today's topic, empirical risk management. It's my great pleasure to introduce you to all to presenter Rohan Light. Rohan has worked on a wide range of enterprise-level data governance, strategy and risk problems, such as re-identification risk, responsible information use, and digital regulation of online labour. During this time, he's also worked on New Zealand Alpine Club and New Zealand Search and Rescue risk management problems. He is currently working on developing AI audit and ethics protocols with the Charity for Humanity. Over to you, Rohan. Looking forward to it. Thank you very much.
Tēnā koutou katoa, ko taratahi te moana, ko wainawa te awa, ko Rohan Light, tōko ingoa. Or I am spiritually close to a mountain called Taratahi, or Mount Holdsworth, which is near an even lovelier river called the Wainawa, and this is in the Wairarapa. And my name is Rohan Light, and welcome to my Risk Empirical. When I was growing up, I was fascinated by this character, the pixie caramel guy, the clever dude asking for a long chew candy bar to escape his imminent execution, knowing that the polite firing squad will soon fall asleep and he can escape by jumping over the wall. In risk management, I think we have to cultivate a positive, challenging, and adaptive mindset. So we might ask ourselves, for any given risk event, what would the pixie caramel guy do? This is what I'll speak to today. I'll dip into decision risk, which is the main paradigm I work within. I'll show some outputs from my current field work, providing portfolio, program, and project advice in health across the Capital Coast and Hutt Valley health districts. I'll move through the Flaw of Averages, one of several statistical anomalies we don't control for. I will show you a very simple way to hack into what Monte Carlo does, but on the spot and for any what if. Then it's into some causal risk stuff, where I'm looking at how hospital, policy, and community interact vis-a-vis working through the big governance rebalancing here. And I'll close with some AI risk material from Europe, something we're very silly Kiwis to sleep on. Empiricism is about observing and learning from experience. I specialize in how different groups approach the likelihood side of the risk matrix. I want to know if there is genuine variation in decision-making, and if so, how did they make it happen? We know, we think, but we are often blind to the ideas we think with, many of which we take from our surroundings uncritically. A lot of what I do involves field work, 3 outputs of which I'll show today. Empiricists have to create instruments. So I'm always looking for these local success stories to give us some better ideas. Yes, this is my rap sheet. I'm active on LinkedIn. That's where I host my microblog on data governance, strategy, and risk. And I also co-host the cybersecurity podcast Barcode. This is me, rocking the authentic 70s hair and collar. I'm really enjoying myself, but I'm putting on a brave face, knowing worse was around the corner, a bit like risk management. Decisive is my social lab. Social lab work is a real thing. It helps produce what I seek, which is evidence of known quality. I'm trained to an inland revenue standard, which is rigorous, and where I got into risk from operational debt recovery work, where I specialized in complex recovery, evidential interviewing, and prosecution for PAYE offences. I got into digital investment around 2010, part of that decade's wave of digital transformation, into Inland Revenue's service delivery business group via the risk and innovation lenses in the P3M Context Portfolio Program project. I followed digital to data via my work at IR and my chairpersonship of the SaaS users of New Zealand. My first risk work outside of Inland Revenue was with the Data Futures Partnership, looking at re-identification risk. I also did risk work for Search and Rescue New Zealand. And then I went down the GRC, Governance, Risk and Compliance route with OSEG, the Open Compliance and Ethics Group, and specialized in AI audit and ethics, working on audit instruments with the charity For Humanity. Why, my man, I'm ashamed of you, dodging that way. They couldn't hit an elephant at this distance. General, I dodged a shell once, and if I hadn't, would have taken my head off. I believe in dodging. Ha ha! All right, my man, go to your place. For a third time, the same shrill whistle closing with a dull, heavy stroke. This is an early example of field reportage. This exchange witnessed as the Confederate sniper found his range in the first 2 shots and landed the target on the third. Overconfidence is dangerous, and leaders who are ego-driven are prone to believing in their own legend, making bad decisions and not seeing past their own interests. There is an adage. I honestly believe it is better to know nothing than to know what ain't so. Josh Billings, 1874. It's good advice. Overconfidence is ever present wherever there are humans assessing odds. Age 13, I was overconfident in my ability to jump my World War II era bicycle over the stream at the bottom of Bicknell's Hill. The problem is, this didn't kill me, because if we survive something, we see it as survivable. And then we assess how much we could have saved if only we'd made a small adjustment. This process bends the perception of odds in our heads and leads people to accept increasingly large amounts of risk. And I'm looking at you, FTX, that crypto fraud factory currently running in the States. My empirical rule of thumb: observation in the moment defeats overconfidence in the moment. So always pay attention to the live surroundings of the risk environment you're interested in. For me, that means daily walking the public sections of the hospital campus. It means I'm always current as to how people are feeling right here, right now. Decision risk is the chance and cost of being wrong, where wrong is a better course of action we would have taken if we could have. The if we could have is a necessary construct to use counterfactuals and causal diagramming. It's a version of the more familiar legal but for sense of causation. It also denotes a real option that isn't necessarily easy to obtain, i.e. there's some risk of not getting it. Back in 2014, I sat down to define what it is that I wanted to observe, but which wasn't directly observable. I knew how to use behavioral science to stimulate people to reveal preferences, which is economist gold. From there, I knew we can adjust microeconomic models with direct observables, more gold. For the object of my study in my social lab, I settled on the decision behavior of groups. I had watched decisions about the state of a project and inland revenue move up and down the organization, changing to suit the interest of third parties. The information was shifting. Facts were dropping off, others were being added. This helped me focus on the importance of real options, which clear out many of the beautiful plans and compelling visions, often showing just talk. Our profession is risk management, and we may have to assess a situation as being critical enough to break glass because it's an emergency. We have to have a hard test. Much of the work in risk management is challenging. We have to work through the choice paths between advising on whether, say, to prefer 100 dead kittens or 80 dead puppies, confronted with terrible choices and no apparent glimmers of light. This is risk work. In the moment, in the room, no appetite for anything not realistic. This really hit home when I was attending a human trafficking presentation at MB. My blood turned cold. That experience helped me while advising a technology startup deploying an AI solution aimed at combating child sexual abuse material on the internet. When confronted with the very real, so much of what we put on paper just disappears. This is why we should hold the Pixie Caramel man close, because we have to get over the wall. There is no choice. There's no mucking about. We have to work through the hardest of the hard. So this is one of my fieldwork pieces. I'm looking at information transfer risk from project to portfolio. So on the left, the organization, then project, then program, then portfolio. Each exclamation point denotes a specific risk node. The graphic identifies there is something systemic that is keeping us wrong much of the time, arguing about partial transformations of partial translations of partial observations. The graphic is designed to help a group identify some key areas of questioning that, if followed, will help them understand where in their own processes, which they know best, they're going wrong. It's also actually a causal model in disguise, showing a program manager under a direct and an indirect information influence who is tasked with influencing themselves, a third party. It's called a collider, and it is not well studied in organizations. Whenever data that is obtained from different points within a common semantic time stream are collated at a point later than all of them, the applicability of the data and insights obtained start to spin in and out of context. Humans are usually temporarily blind, but this is a big decisional killer. I also use analogy to describe the program manager as like a catcher in baseball. They are receiving a ball, project information, at velocity to catch it and quickly throw it to another team member as program information. But the former is tactical and forward-facing. The latter is strategic and rear-facing. We shouldn't rationally expect the two to naturally exchange information well, but we do. And then wonder why the numbers don't stack up. The flaw of averages. A plan made using averaged inputs is wrong on average. As a program manager, you're looking at a set of averaged metrics of the component projects, contextual to the current project state, which can be sampled many times along a timeline. Most of those metrics will be wrong. We quickly become interested in how wrong and whether or not any states of wrong are survivable or even advantageous. I've actually nudged the flaw of averages out of sight here. It would be more visible if the graphic just said, the Mad Hatter's amazing construction program, 5 projects for a total of 534 million. If I now talk to people about money, it won't take long for the average project value to be discussed colloquially as 107 million. New numbers are derived by people from old numbers, and this will happen always as long as there are people. The flaw of averages would still be present if the column above the numbers said something like current state valuation. That sort of thing is going to be stuffed full of inputs obtained from averages. Flaws are ricocheting wildly through people's interrogation of the facts at this point. Decision risk is high. There are many pathways to making that wrong choice. You're looking at a runaway truck ramp. It is a real thing and a very good physical control. It also sort of shows a fitted line, a time series, and an increasing range. That's the dotted white lines. Note, the route the marshmallow took prior to the second truck, which is the one with the dash cam crossing his line of travel. The average position for his journey is good news, not splat. But the average state of the marshmallow man is splat. The flaw of averages is one reason why project professionals will often remark the only time a project plan is valid is the day it's signed. Now, they recognize it in action on the ground empirically, but the information signal doesn't make its way further up the decision chain. People will start justifying, and inevitably, someone misquotes von Clausewitz. The original quote, "No plan of operations extends with certainty beyond contact with the main enemy force." Everyone shrugs, that's just the way it is. I say no. This is a case of uncontrolled statistical anomalies floating around the input numbers. Most people are sleeping on it. In this context, managing decision risk is the successful avoidance of being wrong, where wrong was a course of action where we didn't control for the flaw of averages. All right. These are my 2 risk volatility tests. I put them together when I was working on a large construction program in information. The first volatility test is blowing the budget. It looks at how much more we might have to pay over the lifetime of the project. The second volatility test is running late. Now, the table is built from real-world actuals. The budget one from a 2017 meta study, plus some McKinsey elements, and the running late one is from a 2022 machine learning meta study. So let's just look at the first project, the waterfront Eiffel Tower replica. I think this is a great idea. We've given it 276 million. Now you can see there a range of outcome likelihoods. It can be on budget, it can be off budget, but best case variance, middle range variance, and then worst case variance. So what I did was I randomized 10 times. And look at what I found. The majority of the randomization follows the normal trend. This is going to blow budget. It's going to go over. Interestingly enough, and when we work down all of those projects, we actually see it's really hard to beat the industry standards. In other words, when we are talking about being on plan, we're probably wrong. Is it us, or are our plans wrong? Our plans are wrong. In causal diagramming, given a properly constructed instrumental variable, randomized testing of that variable against a known superset relationship yields respectable decision value on the RCT, randomized control trial strength. I remember to first clearly ask an in real life question, an uncertainty I want to reduce by process of elimination. Here, it's over budget or over time. Now, the two are valid in and of themselves, but they should be consulted separately because they can suggest different courses of action when applied to conditions in real life. It doesn't take long looking at the table to see an implication. If we test again for the 11th time, where is it going to land? Are you ready to roll the dice? By the way, you can get a dice roller on your phone, or you can purchase physicals. Whatever the case, I am now ready at any point to run a simulation around what is likely to happen in this project, for this program, in this portfolio, in these real world conditions right now. Very, very powerful. Now, recall the Flaw of Averages. As a program manager, if you randomize each individual project a few times, 10 will do it absolutely fine. You will control for many of the weird individual instance variance that affects any single observation of a recurrent pattern. In this case, it is just really unlikely that you're going to come in on time or on budget. Okay, you take a test to see if you have Ichthyoscraphly disease. It comes back positive. How likely is it that you have Ichthyoscraphly? The forward probability is the probability of a positive test given that you have Ichthyoscraphly. Probability 1, test given disease. This is the same for most humans because it depends only on the technical capability of the device to perform tests. The inverse probability is the one that you're actually interested in. What is the probability that you have Ichthyoscraphly given the positive test? P2, disease given test. P1, test given disease, doesn't behave the same way as P2, disease given test. Most organizations answer inverse probability questions with forward probability answers. When I take people through this very real decision risk in my pre-health days, generally get ignored. when you use medical examples. Folk would tell me sagely, probabilities work differently for them. They didn't really say that. They used different words, but it was the gist. And they just didn't know what they were saying. Now I'm in health. I get to use these examples all the time, and everyone gets it, either because they have a clinical background, i.e. some science, or they're in a clinical context, looking at patients, looking at machines, looking at patients, looking at machines. It's bizarre how powerful context is. Whatever the case, not understanding the difference between the forward from the inverse probability can give you a risk event that hits you like a stone out of the blue. The epistemic shock is severe because you've done the math, you've done the special management dances. You were sure that you were okay, but you were not. Oh, pardon. When someone says they want to know what to do, you can tell this by hearing it, they are appealing to instrumental rationality. When they ask about what is true, they are appealing to epistemic rationality. Things are always getting serious in a professional context when you use the word epistemic, but we can't dodge it in this case. When things get epistemically muddy, we are at high risk of building completely believable worlds which are also totally untrue. This is illustrated by the Avenue 5 transcript that will follow a few slides later. The sense of not knowing what is real is a toxic influence on decision-making and is a self-made curse of the modern age. The issue is well covered in the book, The Death of Expertise by Tom Nichols. This is the third of my fieldwork slides. I've been doing a big refocusing on controls. I start my risk work with controls, basically. The Mad Hatter has hired a good program manager, it would seem. This person is thinking in terms of preventative, detective, and corrective controls, which is the source of much of the explanatory power of probabilistic methods. We know what we did, we know we did them, and we can rate how well it turned out. So it's now about the teaching moment. We want a good mix of blue control types, and we want to move controls from red, ineffective, to green, effective. All of this is observable, and thus can be made subject to empirical methods. This is my render of Judea Pearl's ladder of causation. It's showing some increasing levels of questioning capability. Note, AI and animals are functionally the same at this point. Also, the what if I do capacity emerges in us as kids. It's innate. Many folk never move past that point. There are different questioning activities attached to these increasingly difficult reasoning challenges. Data supplies the bottom rung and then sort of stops with a push up into the middle. The middle is where a lot of management professionals work, some of whom know they're doing interventions. Now, if you know you're doing something and why, then you have what's called an actors concept. This is why fake it till you make it can be so dangerous. The hard one is at the top. What if I had done? Imagining counterfactuals. This is one reason why I randomize enough upfront to get a plausible set of likely paths. Claims distant from those paths shouldn't be believed without significant changes somewhere in the system of study. Remember, decision risk. It's the chance and cost of being wrong. lots of places to go wrong here. This is Judea Pearl's inference engine, breaking down different parts of the causal diagramming method. This is when things are working well. We take knowledge, convert them into assumptions. Assumptions go into the causal model from which we obtain testable implications. We then have a query. We put the query to the causal model. This will tell us if the query can even be answered. And the output is an estimate, a test mechanism that produces stable estimates of known evidential value. Now, in causal work, the estimate and the query do not coincide. In statistical estimation, the difference is not seen as being that important. So now we get to adding data. That's where we do the statistical estimation. We've got the estimate, out pops the estimate. Information of known quality is being produced here, and any quality is being passed on to all downstream analytics. We know how the information was produced. We have model first quality data. We have posteriors for later Bayesian work, and we can do variance tests against a stable standard. This is ideal. This is more or less how it does happen. Assumptions just move straight through to testable implications. The query moves more or less straight through to the estimate because we probably don't have a causal model in play. Then we add the data and we do the stats, which we do know, but we have a weaker estimate, and the estimate at the back comes out weaker. An uncertain link between knowledge and assumptions. We don't deploy a causal model. We don't know how to falsify. So to falsify, this is really, really, really important point. We submit a claim to a known prove it wrong test. If the prove it wrong test fails, the claim is true to the extent of the failed test. It's actually kind of worse in real life because the assumptions are often from people telling us that the Marshmallow Man is in fact alive because their numbers say so, or their model says so, or the minister said so. And I'm being generous with the production of testable implications. It's a rare phrase to overhear. We also don't ask questions that aren't compound paragraphs with so many possible answers they're possibly rhetorical. It's important to spend a bit of time with your questions to see if you can think of a way they might be answered. Life's too short to try and answer questions that have no answer. Literally, these are known as intractable problems. They take infinity time to solve. And people don't usually think in terms of estimates either. But everyone has their own stash of data, and few people take the time to check the numbers. AKA, assumptions get dignified by data and accepted as fact. And this can destroy you. Here's the big one. I'll take some time to work through this. This is the current end state output of applying my causal diagramming methods to some basic risk configurations for any representative health project working with other stakeholders on behalf of the people te tangata. Guidance itself is on the bottom. 4 stages of engagement risk in complex human groups, all ostensibly pointed at helping a third party. We labour under uncertainty. These are causal risk models. They use the language of causal science to model prospective risk without losing sight of innovation opportunities. They encourage matakite, foresight, and situational awareness for the purposes of risk avoidance and benefit realization. There are two sides to uncertainty and two sides to each of those two sides. Some of these effects are helpful opportunities, while others are not, threats. We manage opportunities as innovation and the threats as risk, all the time not fully understanding how the two relate. So how to read it? We are applying intervention X for effect A on M, which is an mediator, which is some other thing that is intended to produce a secondary effect B on target state Y. Whew. However, there are unknown, unseen, unestimated, and unconsidered effects C and D on both the mediator and the target state. Off to the next one. So my context is change investment, building and sustaining value for Te Whatu Ora and local communities. The model says Project P is an intervention on some health capability group B to improve health outcomes H. And yes, we can speak Te Reo Māori with this. The operation of the causal model is unchanged. This is really important. It's because all humans think causally. We don't think statistically. We don't think probabilistically. So now the project is the kaupapa. The business group is the rōpū. And the people, the tangata. So now I'm down on that second level. I'm going to move through each of these 4 stages. The first, risk case. The effect A of the kaupapa on the rōpū did not have an impact on a successful outcome. So that's point 1, the project didn't do much. But the business unit did heaps, point 9. And there was a successful outcome. This is where we might have, the project may have insufficient independence from other rōpū. And there may be a conflict of interest over the kaupapa. The second basic change investment risk case. The effect A of the kaupapa on the rōpū was excellent, but the rōpū had no impact on an unsuccessful outcome. A common situation is where the rōpū has insufficient mana or standing with other rōpū who might have a conflict of interest over tangata. The third case. Both kaupapa and rōpū were successful, but tangata felt no improvement. Oh, this is not a very nice one. This indicates deep-seated strategic or cultural obstacles. The fourth, both kaupapa and rōpū were unsuccessful, but the tangata felt improvement. It's the same problem, but the other way, and it's even really, really worse. It may indicate significant untapped or unknown innovation opportunities, or something greater within tangata is empowering and enabling change. We don't know. We have to get out of the building and observe. Many teams have similar decision-making processes as the crowd in this episode of Avenue 5. 3 things come here together to power any bad idea through rationality. Not knowing how to identify what is true, having a wrong causal model, and the herd effect. The gag is based on the collapse of truth set standards. When BS isn't called out on the spot, expertise authority figures are undermined and an in-group, out-group forms. This was written during first stage COVID, by the way. Groups can act this way very quickly. The scene focuses on how the crowd keeps surfacing any explanation for their current state that doesn't involve being in a spaceship, which in fact they are. We've just had one passenger get into the airlock, jubilant, they'd figured it all out. Transcript. Captain. No, 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 no. Dragged back by crowd. Public relations guy. No, no, no. Standing, truly stunned. Person in space dock. Thumbs up. Frozen. Floats out. Crowd. Silence. People turn around. Stunned. Conspiracy theorist. It's VFX, guys. Visual effects. It's a projection. It's not even a very good one. That guy is going to be healed in the green room any minute now. Captain. What? No. No. What? What do you think you're talking about? He's a desiccated man. We all just saw a man become desiccated. PR guy. God, walks off. Scene shift. Rival rich lister Harrison confronting vague owner Herman. Harrison, you're playing me. I'm in. Herman, absolutely not. I don't know what is going on. Harrison, I should have known a real trip to Saturn was beyond you, you small-time huckster. Herman, what? No. Harrison, see you later at home, crying in court. Herman, no. Harrison, we really are in space. I think. Harrison, you're so cute when you're lying. Turns for space dock door. Captain, in aside, we're all right. Oh, no, no, no. Moves to stop Harrison, entering the space dock. Harrison, chest to chest. What's your next move, huh? Captain, that's a good question. Do you mind if I smack you in? Harrison, go ahead. Captain, Billy, hit the gentleman. Steps back, stops crowding out sensible decision maker Billy, who steps forward. Billy, yes, right. Mr. Harrison turns to address the crowd. Listen to me. Anyone who wants 1,000 new bucks, help me escape. Crowd surges forward, overwhelming Captain and Billy. Harrison, jubilant in space dock, turns laughing. Ha ha ha! Joke's on! Freezes and floats out. I'm not going to end on that. Even though it's every other meeting when people are arguing about the truth validity of their control information. This is from Cat AI. It's a great paper. It's a procedure for conducting conformity assessment of AI systems in line with the EU Artificial Intelligence Act by Luciano Floridi, Matthias Holveg, Maria Rosaria Tadeo, Javier Amir Silva, Jacob Morkander, and Yuni Wen. It's actually the risk control threshold under the AIA. But there's a huge amount of really crunchy control information in the main body of the paper. Digging into it will open up the independent audit and AI ethics fields, plus getting a sense of what serious work in the field looks like, should you want a good model. So this is how For Humanity shows how the EU AIA risk categories are associated to different stages of compliance, and where an effective ethics committee, who is charged with managing the risk of bad ethical choices, works. Excuse me. In relation to legal frameworks and the two big impacts of hard and soft ethics. Now, of note, here in New Zealand is the recent coverage that Foodstuffs has installed facial recognition technology cameras in 29 North Island supermarkets. Now here, they can more or less just do it. But over in the EU, they know this technology is both flawed and dangerous, and thus rate them as high risk. You have to provide a conformity assessment. Also, any verticals where additional due diligence is required is noted. Education, employment, justice, immigration. Again, don't really do this here. The distinction between hard and soft ethics is also important. Ethics are hard when they are embodied in legislation and soft when embodied in the will of the community or professional good practice. An example here is the increasing desire for better representation and more diversity and inclusion in key decision-making. And this is our current process flow for how an organization should conduct an ethical risk assessment with pre-decision, decision, and post-decision control points. The table at the top shows this is part of the many for humanity audit criteria. You have to learn a lot. In this case, the general oversight and accountability section. Now, the observable is located in the public disclosure document. If you can't see it, you need to assume it's not there. We take care to identify the nature of the decision. Most will be multifaceted in the modern era. Hard to get a binary decision these days, and certainly in AI and tech. We put pros and cons next to each other, as well as identifying all the tensions and trade-offs that are usually sitting in the background. We confirm whether a decision was reached, and then look for the residual risk. From there, we want to see traceability of the choice, and out of it should come confirmation of what good looks like. So we contrast this with what happens in practice. The tensions and trade-offs are probably hidden, and the pros and cons are probably weighted in a preferred direction. We may see residual risk, but traceability will quickly fall off, and the end result is being unable to confirm if the choice was deployed into the AI. It's my last slide. A useful rule of thumb: we have more data than we think, need less data than we think, and a good decision is closer and faster than we think. We burden ourselves with all sorts of decisional garbage, often because we haven't identified an uncertainty, framed a question, and figured out how to answer it. Being able to move quickly and directly is very important in risk. Getting hung up on measurements and metrics loses time, and with it, our intervention window. That's it for me. Hit me up on LinkedIn or subscribe to the Barcode podcast. I'm also mobile here in Wellington, and I'm always interested in finding interesting stuff. Which takes us to questions. David.
Hey, thanks, Rohan. Look, I really enjoyed that. It was certainly different, but it was certainly extremely relevant to what I've seen, especially dealing with and working with many project teams, risk teams, and things like that. And I think you've really talked about something that people have been thinking about, people have been talking about, but it really hasn't been presented. So I really enjoyed that. Thanks very much. I really did. And look, now, if anyone has any questions, it would be great. Please ask anything at all. Now's the time to do it. Well, Rohan's online. And look, we'd love to have you type something in and we'll have a bit of a chat about it. But just while they're doing that, Rohan, I just wondered, when you're talking to people about kind of your method and your view on, say, programs and projects and risk, what kind of response do you get? Is it changing?
Yes, it's changing, because the closer you get to something really scary, people have a lower tolerance for repeating conversations that seem to go nowhere. Their appetite for something real increases significantly. Also, one of the things in risk work is answering that question, risk to whom? Risk to whom? And certainly in health, it's really obvious where the risk is. And so I find that the more abstract your world, the harder it is to get these methods across the line. The more real and dangerous defense would be another one, the more likely people will open up to it. But I think the big driver is AI. People now know data does weird things. It's not quite the same world anymore.
I can completely agree, and look, the data is really coming into effect. I think many organisations looking at that right alongside kind of how people think and how people do think. That's why it really resonated with me, Rohan. Hey, look, if there's no questions and you can still type them in, I'll just start wrapping up here. But look, the online webinar today will be available very soon. It'll be sent out to everyone who participated the next day or so you can see it again and go from there, and also get onto Rohan. You've got any other questions afterwards. But look, thanks very much, Rohan. We really enjoyed that. And thanks for everyone for coming today and making the time. As I said, it'll be recorded and be sent out to you. If you're not already a member of Risk New Zealand, please jump on board or get in touch with us. Happy to chat about what it looks like and going to the future. Certainly a very exciting year coming up in 2023 for all of us. And having you on board will just make it a little bit more interesting. So thank you again. See you in the new year. And everyone, please have a wonderful Christmas and a new year, and keep safe. Thank you, Rohan.
Kia ora.